This is the Slots and Sockets podcast, episode number 36. I am one of your hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime back in his headquarters / command center.
Penguin. Oh, sorry, G-Force Penguin.
G-Force Penguin. You're RTX on now.
I'm RTX on. I've got my G-Force Land shirt. I got my G-Force hat. You know, I've been turned apparently to the green side.
Oh no, your green team. We're gonna clash next time we meet.
You know what? I have a lot of good things to say, and so yeah. So let's just jump right into it.
Sure.
Okay, so everybody and their grandmother's talking about 50 series. So let's talk about 50 series for a second. Okay, I'm going to go backwards in time a little bit and talk about 40 series.
Oh, wait. To go backwards in time, we got to do the thing. Diddle-oo, diddle-oo, diddle-oo.
Sure, whatever.
Anyway.
Go back when the 40 series was announced. They said the 4080 was going to be faster than the 3090, or they kind of were doing the same thing, and they're like twice as fast. And everyone's like, holy crap. And when it all came out, like what we all realized is that they were playing funny maths with their doubling thing. And if you look at the charts, it's legitimate that they're still doing this. Okay. Now, okay, nobody has these cards. Nobody has seen performance of these cards. So it's possible that we are. But I just look at the notes, the footnotes in the slides, and there are some serious questions. If I compare a 5070 with DLSS 4 compared to a 4090 with DLSS 3, they're not comparable. Okay, now the second half, because nobody knows if DLSS 4 is going to be good or if it's going to be absolute garbage. Now, one would say that there's an uplift between DLSS 3 and DLSS 4. Okay, I'll give you that. Okay, but the question that comes back into is this something that a lot of gamers are going to do, or is this going to bring in a lot of frame delays, in frame time? I would guess that we would see that, but we don't know. And I'd be very interested to hear what exactly we're going to get with DLSS 4, how it works, where it does well. I do not think this is just a driver setting, by the way. I do believe this is going to have to be cooked into games. So then the follow-up question is how many games are going to have DLSS 4, and are we going to get any prior games to add DLSS 4 in, and will it work like that?
Yeah, well, I think we already have some games where DLSS 4 is available that they showed off, like Cyberpunk, and they're listing No Man's Sky on their page, and they're listing a couple other games where, like Dark Tide and... Well,
you would think that those are probably going to be the Nvidia donated developers that received money to say you need to have DLSS 4. Right. Here's some cards. Here's a bunch of money to make it added. We want to focus and bring you into reviews. And on day one launch, you need to have DLSS 4. Yeah. I think that's what it is. So first and foremost, do not go pre-order a card. Wait for independent third-party reviews, okay? Always. And wait, I'm very interested to see raster to raster, like just raw performance rasterization, how that looks, 4080 to 5080. How does ray tracing 4080 to 5080, with the same settings, like DLSS off, raster plus RT, low, medium, and high. And how does that compare? I do believe we don't really even know. Like, they didn't come out and say, this is the clocks. They gave us core counts on the website. It was very, very Um, what I don't know. It was very non-committal,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I just question um, the performance targets. Now, I will the one thing I will say, pricing wise, I think everyone was all worried that pricing was going to be horrific.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, to be fair, 2 grand for a 5090 is still high.
it is
It's not as high as we were expecting based on some of the other pricing leagues, but
a lot of the pricing links, yeah. And then the thing
still.
is I think they kept the well, that one went up. The notion is the 80 series, which is right now 4080 Super, is supposed to be 999.
Mm-hmm.
5080 is going to be 999. The 5070 is going to be 649, 549, 549.
Let me grab that. Actually, I have the slide here. Yeah, 549 for the 5070, 749 for the TI, the 80, 999, and 2 grand for the 5090.
Okay, so my suggestion, my thought here is I think the 5070 will sell, but I think the TI will do quite well because I think for $200, I believe that RAM is going to be huge, especially upon gamers.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that 16 gigs is important for gamers. You're also going to get a performance boop. My gosh,
Boop.
I was talking about BOP in iRacing, so boop came out. You're going to get the bump in some horsepower of the TI. So I think that there's enough there between the added memory. I just think a lot of gamers are going to look at the TI as a more of a long term game card,
Yeah.
as opposed to the vanilla 70. Um,
Yep.
I really think it'll be very interesting to see um, where reviews and performance hangs out, like where it kind of settles here. My initial thought is the 80 series is going to be the best bang for your buck. Although I will say
Mm-hmm.
at $2,000, while the 5090 is expensive, I can see the added value in that if you can keep that card for a long period of time. I know it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I get it. But at 32 gigs, you're not going to have VRAM problems anytime soon. And if performance is what we think it will be, I'm going to guess the 5090 is going to be somewhere between 30 and 40% faster.
Yeah, the chart with the 5080 or I'm sorry, the 5090 versus the 4090 really kind of shows, and I think I have it here. If you look at it, nope, that's you. There we go. So if we look at, I actually don't have it here, so I apologize. But if we look at the charts on the website, the first item there is Far Cry 6 with RT only. So that's going to give you your raster performance, and it's not 1.5 times. It's more like 20 to 30% improvement
It's
over the 4090. And
uh,
the
it's
funny thing
interesting
is,
because Far Cry uses, is it Unreal?
no, Far Cry I think is its own engine. I could be wrong on that, but
It's
yeah.
Ubisoft. What engine is it uses? Go ahead, keep going.
But it's very interesting that uh the the graphs that they show on the 50 series site pretty much show the same spread between the 40 series and the 50 series when you're looking at them. And the only one that's really significantly different is when you get into the 5080 and 5090 that add the generative AI stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
I really think that we're going to see kind of the normal gen on gen performance bump for raster, and where they're pulling all of this crazy, oh, we got way better performance, blah blah blah. Um, and interestingly, in their relative performance comparisons, the system they used was running a 9800X3D. But I'm looking here at this, and it doesn't really give you any good specifics. It doesn't even really tell you what card. Oh no, I'm sorry, it does. So the 5070 is outrunning the 4070 by about 20 to 30%, and their prior gen counterparts, the 50 series, is kind of beating it without DLSS by, you know, that little 20 to 30%. But when you add in the frame gen or multi frame gen DLSS, that's kind of where things get very interesting.
I really think that part of what we'll need to do is to kind of see how that DLSS 4 works
Mm-hmm.
and how it goes. Like, how is it impacting frame time? Um, I don't know how that looks, and
Yeah.
so I think that's going to be really important. They talked about it, but they really didn't dive a lot into other than this is how over from a top down of what it's doing. So again, I would be very interested to see in reviews how that looks.
Yeah,
So,
and I think a lot of the reviews are probably going to focus, as they always have, on testing with DLSS off, which is going to basically nuke the advantage that the 50 series has. Um, but I think it would make sense if some of the testers did some DLSS comparisons just to kind of get an idea of what the difference in feel is going to be like. Because one of the things people regularly complain about, which for me it doesn't bug me because doesn't it just doesn't. But there are people who are horribly sensitive to increased input latency, and in all the slides they showed where they talked about latency, the DLSS off tended to be slightly higher latency, or slightly higher latency with it off. But when you put in multi-frame gen, that seemed to reduce the latency, which tells me it's reducing the raster overhead as well.
I mean, the notion is if you're going to use the tensor cores to generate frames,
Mm-hmm.
it's very possible that if your tensor cores are fast, that it's going to lighten the raster code that's on the GPU.
Right.
The question is can they keep up with it and does it work? And that's, I think, the loaded question. You can say a lot of things. Let me see the thing work.
Yeah.
If it works well, then I think you're in a really good position. And I just don't know what that is. And so rather than saying I think it's good, I'm going to say, well, wait. I
Yep.
want to see how some of these features shake out. But I will say, in general, I think these are positive signs moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's anything particularly bad here outside of the pricing. I still feel like the pricing is pretty badly skewed. I mean, 749, if you think about it, is what we paid for an 80 class GPU just a few years ago. I think it was
The 4070 Ti Super. What's this 4070 Ti MSRP? Because the 4070 Ti was 839. So 4070 Ti for the 5070 Ti, you're going for 730 from 839 down to 750. You're still going to keep the 16 gigs, but you're going to
mm,
get the bump in. I'm going to assume it's faster than a 4070 Ti. I mean, if
should
not,
be.
then
Yeah.
Nvidia's smoking crack.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I'm not saying I really want to see some reviews. I'm not going to be anybody that buys anything pre-review.
Yeah. No, and that's the same thing for me. Is I wouldn't be buying the first batch of cards, but it's not that the cards look bad to me. Nothing really stands out as, oh, this is just a bunch of crap. Um, but I feel like they're trying to hype up the AI stuff to make up for the gen on gen performance lift that people were expecting.
Yeah.
But I that said, I think people's expectations were probably kind of overinflated as it has been in the past, because they're like,
Mhm.
oh, it's going to be so much faster, and well, it never really has turned out that way. And so it, I just the thing that kills me is the price, and at 2 grand, yeah, I could see that price moving a lot of cards. Um, but I think, kind of looking at the stack as it stands right now, the real value card in this, without seeing any benchmarks or anything like that, looks like it to me. It's probably going to be the 5070 Ti, because you got
Okay.
pretty much the you got comparable performance to the 4080. You've got, at least kind of spitballing based on the graphs, you've got 16 gigs of VRAM, which the 5080 has, and you're not losing a whole lot in AI performance too. The tops is what, 1300, 1400 on there versus 1800 on the 5080.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is a bit, but are you really going to care, or would you rather save that $200 and put it into getting yourself maybe a 9950 X3D or something like that?
Look, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. Um, you know, all I could say is I'm just in general, um, it was better than it was expected on the pricing front. I think there's questions on performance of where that ends up being, but in general, I think the overall, you know, view that a lot of gamers are having is positive. I think a lot of gamers were thinking this was going to be very negative, and especially when it comes to pricing. Um, I think if Nvidia can pull off a good price to performance, then I think they're in great shape. So I really think that's it.
Yeah, and
Um,
when it
with
comes to
that
putting
being,
cards, well, yeah,
yeah,
when
I
it
think
when it
so.
comes to putting cards in people's systems, price for performance is really what wins the day every
Yep.
day of the week.
So let's switch gears and let's talk about AMD, because AMD came out and didn't say a lot about. They just said that the 9070 and
Yep.
97 XT were things that they were coming.
Hey guys, it's
They
a
didn't
thing.
they didn't come out with any performances
Yep.
or pricing. That was sort of like a footnote. And then, a lot of gamers were like, great, so that's gonna mean it sucks.
Right.
And AMD is kind of came back and like, well, we only had 45 minutes. And I'm like, okay, bull crap.
Right.
You could have come out and said, we don't have a ton of time. Here's the quick nitty gritty. Here's what it is. This is that. This is what the performance, roughly will be. You can go to our website, at the link below, and it will have a bunch of information for you to view.
Yeah.
Um, and they could have easily done that. They didn't. And I think they didn't do it on purpose. I think they did it on purpose.
I think they
Uh,
did. I think they didn't want to get PlayStation 3. Because they didn't want to be like, hey guys, so we're selling it for the 70 or 9070 XT for 649, and then Nvidia's like, yep, here's our card that's going to blow your doors off, and it's $100 cheaper.
I think I think that, because look, I mean, uh, from from you know trade group to trade group, okay, it is very, companies that are very well aware of what their competitors are doing
Yep.
and what they plan on doing. And there's been some talk that maybe AMD got whiff of some of the things that they were going to say. You know, it's not uncommon. I will say for sure. I know that Jensen was at the step facility the night before on Sunday night.
Mhm.
Okay. And they were doing a dry run of the presentation. Okay. I know he was there. So I'm in person. Got to shake the man's hand. He's a very nice man.
He also sung you happy
Um,
birthday by sound of it.
he did sing happy birthday to me, and he did give me a laptop. It was very nice. Um, but um, we he was there. I am certain that they probably saw some of the slides or had some insider information about what was going to be said.
Yep.
I believe that impacted AMD's press conference. Now, here's the thing. If AMD had come out and said, "Yay, the 9070 XT for, 549,"
Mhm.
and then the 5070 comes out at 549, they got to be like, shoot, that's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
I think how important pricing on the 9070 is. I think it was probably smart for them not to say something. Now, I will say with the 9070, we've got some leaks. Someone at CES with an RX 970 non XT did a test, a benchmark in Black Ops. Okay,
Okay.
4K, everything on, DLSS off, and it pulled an average 99 frames a second.
That's pretty impressive.
Not bad.
At 4K? Dang.
Yeah, 4K. So I now the question is what does that? But it's a real card. Okay. It was you know yeah, it was 4K, upscaling off, frame gen off. It a 9950X 3D, so it's about as good as you're going to get there.
Mhm.
And AMD RDNA 4 graphics. And the GPU driver was 24.30.0. So that's we know isn't current gen because the current version is 24.12.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
Um,
definitely a beta BIOS
if
or
that
driver.
seems pretty good. I think the problem is I think that again, I'm concerned at how well this is because where does the 9070 XT need to be to sell? And I think it's pretty given that gamers view value in the software suite that you get from RTX and then from Nvidia.
Mhm.
Um, in fact, a lot of I think, and this is very common, a lot of gamers, at least that I've spoken with, sort of view them as the preferred, even if I
Mhm.
have to give up performance at a price point, the notion that I'm going to get really good, driver support and game support. And to be honest, I had to say I bought and I have an AMD card, and I don't feel like my drivers suck, but I also don't feel like I'm getting performance bumps like I think I've gotten with Nvidia cards in the past.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I thought we would see more optimization from what we learned with PlayStation, and that hasn't happened. Um, so I just I question where they can really be with that XT. I
Yeah.
almost think that the XT version needs to be like 449.
I would say for the XT version, if it does have 24 gigs,
It
uh
doesn't.
no. Well,
It'll only
they're
have
supposed to
16.
have a 24 gig version, but
Now, I believe that that's true, but I do not believe it will be launched. I think it's
oh,
going to
okay.
be a
Gotcha.
20 gig, and then they're going to launch. That's my guess. I haven't seen it. The leak that we have shows a 16 gig non XT version.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, so I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know. And I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but I feel like AMD is AMDing themselves on the Radeon side
Yeah. They're
because
snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
uh, you know, the other half is I think this was going to be a struggle launch for them no matter what.
Yeah.
They weren't going to be super competitive on performance. They were always going to have to be value, and Nvidia just really gave them the middle finger.
Hmm.
And I think maybe AMD Nvidia was like, well, they didn't give us a price. What are we going to do? Screw it. Let's just get aggressive and just release it on our aggressive pricing.
Yeah.
I think that they thought that the pricing was going to be um, higher.
Yeah.
The other question is, I wonder if some of the leaks they had slides with higher pricing, and maybe the leaks that was leaked or was maybe allowed to be seen by certain people that would have gotten to AMD possibly showed uh, uh, um, had higher pricing.
Hmm.
Think about that. If it was like RTX 4090 for $2,500 and the 80 series was $1,400
Yeah.
and the 70 series was $1,000, you know, they'd be like, but you know, if we really can, you know, you see some of those other lofty goals of a 5070 beating you know, without seeing some of the caveats.
Right.
I don't know.
Which they excluded from the slides in the presentation.
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean,
I'm
the pricing I would like to see for the XT, I think 500, if it falls where the rumors were pointing, I think 500 would make sense. 499. If they then took the 5070 non XT version or 9070 XT, non XT, words are hard. If they took the non XT 9070 and priced that at 449 or even 399, then I think both of those cards would sell far better than they've sold cards in the past. Whether or not they can afford to do that is a whole other question. Because we've heard rumors all over the shop. We've heard 449 for the 9070. Back when we thought it was going to be the 8800. And I don't know. I mean, if AMD wants to win, or at least get some sort of market share that is a win, they're gonna have to compete hard. They are basically in this fight, they are analogous to Apple, where Nvidia is analogous to Microsoft. They're You're basically going up against the company that not only has the vast majority of the market share, um, you're going up against the company that has the mind share too, because there are better options out there compared to Windows, but what does everybody know? And it's the same thing on the graphics side. Anybody that's involved in gaming knows Nvidia. Nobody cares that there's an AMD chip in their Xbox or PlayStation.
I think it's going to continue with Radeon. I think Radeon isn't going to sell well in the 7,000 series, um, minus the mid range cards. 6,000 series didn't sell well. They were okay. They weren't they weren't pathetic.
Yeah,
But
they did better with the 6000 series, but yeah, the 7000
I
fell off a
just
cliff.
I'd be very interested to hear what a lot of gamers view of what a good price. Because part of me thinks Santa Penguin wants to give all gamers a performance boost for less money.
Mm-hmm.
And so Santa Penguin thinks that, you know, 449, 399 for the XT is amazing value where you get a bunch of sales. Um, I don't know if they can be profitable at that, but Santa Penguin still wants it. So, and Santa
Yep.
Penguin should get what he wants because I would love to have a 399 XT 9070. I just don't think that's realistic.
Yeah, or even 449. Like that would make a lot of sense, I think. And
I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if that's realistic either. I mean,
yeah,
I'm serious.
I don't either.
Part of me thinks that 499 is probably closer to reality.
Yeah.
But even then, I don't know if in all honesty, if they'll actually be able to do that.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. We will certainly have to see. And
the other half is that, I would say real quick, okay, if it's 499, okay, that means you're really, you got to be somewhat close to a 57D. Yeah. Now, if you've got 16 gigs of RAM, I can see the justification there because you can get some more RAM. Okay. That might be a hard target to beat because the notion is, we're expecting the 7900, the 9070 to be kind of in the 7900 XT. I don't think anybody has leaked that it's going to be faster than an XTX.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to be. I think it's not going to be there. I could see in some scenarios where like the XT may be faster because it does have some more memory, so higher resolutions and games that are happy with more VRAM. Mm-hmm. But if the notion is that I can get 7900 XT with a performance boost and a big jump in ray tracing, then I think that's possible. I really think, though, is that, again, AMD didn't say anything. So, I mean, what are gamers supposed to think? That's the problem. And by not saying a lot, you've said a lot. And that's, I think, the problem is that by saying nothing, you're saying something.
Yeah.
You're choosing not to say something rather than taking the opportunity to say, this is what I've got up my sleeve. And if you had something up your sleeve, you'd be like, hey, second, I got something really cool for you. They didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, AMD did have some cool things. The 9950 X3D, that's a cool thing. The HS, the mobile X3D is a very cool thing. To be honest, I think it's probably the coolest thing that they released here.
Yep.
I think that's awesome. Would be a very cool laptop processor to have. Really going to get into that desktop replacement piece, I think. We'll see what the performance looks like, but I just think Radeon is a backseat, and I think that AMD is, unless something changes, it feels like Radeon is backseat again. Now the question is, does anything that we have, does it impact Intel? No, it just reaffirms that Intel's really not much of a, like, there's not going to be a 250 price point for anybody.
Intel's the Commodore 64 of this generation.
Yeah, when everyone else is on Super Nintendos.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Well, on that bombshell, I think we're going to call it an evening here. Thank you all for watching and giving us a little bit of your time. Do remember to like and subscribe and do all the magic algorithmic goodness down below in the doobly-doo. And we love hearing from you and seeing your comments. We've been seeing more and more comments on our videos, so thank you. Until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Good night.